You know, I'm gonna give you a history lesson.
We got some dumbass motherfuckers floating around this country.
Stop laughing! And when I do, start.
Also, y'all did some nasty-ass jokes on my ass, too.
Funny jokes and unfunny jokes come out of the same birth.
You fucking guys are unbelievable.
Why are you laughing?
All right, evening, everybody. I'm not going to do the same intro again, but Kirk Minihane and Jeff D are here. Thanks for joining. Sorry to bother you.
Let me recap real quick. Jeff gave it an 82, but 82 is not as good as Mike thinks it is.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, Jeff has a history of scoring movies, and 82 is bullshit, basically.
Jackass Forever, Indiana Jones, yeah.
And 82 is essentially
Dory,
worthless.
Ant-Man, Doctor Strange. Yeah.
Finding Dory, yeah, exactly. There you go.
Yeah. So I thought Jeff loved this movie because he gave it an 82. Essentially, an 82 is a failing grade.
The film, Mike, is Saturday Night.
Yes, Saturday Night.
Go ahead.
About NBC's Saturday Night, which we now know as Saturday Night Live, which I found to be like distractingly inaccurate. So I guess the place I want to start from that annoyed me right from the beginning, because this put me in like an angry mood where I just couldn't watch the idea that like Lorne Michaels or anyone else is outside barking trying to get people into a national television taping an hour and a half before the broadcast is crazy. And that's why the rest of the movie I was like, well, this is just bullshit now.
I think it comes down to these things where, you know, I don't know where Jeff is on it, but like for me, it's you either go in buying, they're like, look, this is just not accurate, and you have a good time, or you're like you are, or like I am to an extent with this too. The same with Hernandez show, where you're just like, in Winning Time, which we talked about. Yeah. Where it's like, you just go in, you're like, look, it's basically like kind of rooted in some truth, and then they just make shit up. And you're like, ah, okay, I'll have a good time. Or you get worked up, and I'm kind of with you. Like, there are so many, I'm sure we'll go over them. I don't know, 100 things that are inaccurate in the movie? Yeah. 200? I have no idea, but you're right. Like, the idea of I mean, we'll get to it later. I mean, Lorne Michaels is on the fucking street like half the movie.
Hey, come on, who wants to see a TV taping? Yeah, let's go. Come on in here, kids.
Even the fact they bring them in and line them up in the hallway and then release them like 30 seconds before the show starts is crazy. Yes. The whole thing is nuts. But yeah, I think you're right. The question's the root of the whole thing is how much does that stuff bother you? If it really bothers you, you're not gonna like. If it bothers you and you know a lot with SNL, you're not gonna like the movie. If it doesn't bother you, I can see how somebody would have a pretty good time just going and watching this, I guess.
Well, so that my answer to that is always, I know the answer is, because people wouldn't see it, but I would say, well, then just make a show about a television taping where everything goes wrong. And it's like, if you have to put the name Saturday Night on it for people to see it, maybe it's not that good a movie. But Jeff actually like kind of enjoyed it, so maybe you have a better perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, like, if you go through like consensus of like people who see this movie, even I'm pretty low on it. Like most people seem to be like kind of high B on this movie, right? And some even low A. So some people really don't care about it. I just think the really good stuff in this is very good. Like there are some really good moments. I think when they nail like the tone of it, like it trying to be this frantic, fast-paced thing. I think it's really solid. For me, honestly, the worst part of this movie, and again, the historical inaccuracy thing doesn't kill me all that much. I wish this movie was written by Aaron Sorkin, who famously like doesn't really care about that. I think what's his quote? It's like, movie. It's not a photograph; it's a painting. That's what he says about biopics. I wish he had done this movie; it would have been better. But the stretch of the movie that sucked, that actually brought this down from like a pretty good movie to like just above okay, is the ice skating scene to the bar scene. Dreadful. That's the one chunk that I will say I really didn't like.
Yeah, like if we were doing like a draft on what's the worst, most egregious like inaccuracies, I think my first pick would be hiring a writer 5 minutes before.
Crazy.
Then having that writer have that Chevy Chase line about the stamp. Yeah. And by the way, Chevy Chase wasn't going to host Weekend Update until 2 minutes before that, when Lorne Michaels said, why don't you do a kid and throw your name in there while you're at it?
Not even why don't you do it. It was like Lorne Michaels was so meticulous the entire movie and then goes, fuck, who cares? Who even cares?
Right.
Let Chevy Chase do it.
Weird. And just like, yeah, I agree. Like that, to me, if we focus on what works about the movie, I liked it best when I wasn't watching any of the old skits. I actually like the Ebersol Michaels dynamic. Like, I even like the faux stuff. I like the scene with Milton Berle and Chevy Chase. I know it's not real, but it's like a good scene. I love that scene. Like it's a good scene. Like it's a Sorkin, like Like, I don't like when they're pretending that, like, Andy Kaufman's hilarious or Belushi's, because, like, I know Belushi's funny, but the guy playing Belushi and me watching it, like, no one in the theater was laughing.
No.
But they're in hysterics. They're, like, rolling around. I'm like, this is not working for me. That stuff was just, like, it was just dead on arrival.
Can part of that be, though, maybe you guys disagree with me, because, I mean, you weren't around for season 1 of SNL, really, or at least don't remember it.
No,
but
I don't.
If you go back and watch old SNL, are you rolling on the floor laughing? You know what I mean? Because, like, when I watch a lot of that old stuff, I'm like, I respect that this is funny, but I personally don't really give a fuck about it. I don't get why John Belushi is considered so brilliant. In a lot of cases, like, Animal House is funny, the Blues Brothers. Right. But, like, if I watch SNL, I'm like, I don't get why this guy karate chopping a pool table is funny to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I felt that way about the first sketch, too, at Belushi. He came out and does a reading with Michael O'Donoghue. I'm like, this just, maybe that's part of it, too, I guess. But, yeah, I liked the Michaels. I actually thought Gabriel Bell was good as Mike, too young, but pretty good. And I thought Philip Seymour Hoffman's Kid Cooper Hoffman was good. Like, there's stuff in the movie I liked. I didn't like it as much as Jeff, but I didn't dislike it as much as you. I think I'm probably in the middle.
The acting in general was good.
Not bad.
Was good, but
the Belushi was the only one I actually didn't totally care for.
Yeah, I felt that was
it felt like an impression more of somebody kind of getting, like, lost in the role and, like, being that person, if that makes sense.
I think it's a tough one to play, and I just think they didn't nail Gilda Radner either. It was weird.
The women, one criticism I saw of the movie was people were like, the women didn't get enough of a voice in the movie, which I think that's kind of true of how SNL was. Yes. So maybe they were doing that on purpose a little bit.
It's really the history of SNL,
right?
With some exception. Yeah, but I don't think Reitman was that smart. He was like, I'm going to make a pointed statement about SNL. I think the characters just aren't that interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I don't. And there was a lot of, and you do this in these movies, a lot of explaining where, like, Garrett Morris is like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm a classically trained, like everyone in this room already knows that. Like, why are you telling us that?
Glad you mentioned that. The origin story of Garrett Morris really bugged me throughout the whole movie, where it's like we see this guy rise over 90 minutes to singing in front of the whole room.
I'm almost sure it didn't happen. Like, I have no idea, but I read, it's funny, I read James Andrew Miller and Tom Shale's Oral History of Silent Life, which is a great book. It's like 800 pages. And there's a lot of that, unless they missed it in that book, there's a lot of stuff going on that I had no idea about.
And they're kind of like tiptoeing around mentioning, like, because what could be like an interesting storyline is that was the role of every black character on SNL until 10 years ago, pretty much. Probably. Like, I think when the Tiger Woods stuff happened, they had like Kenan Thompson play him.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like, the role of a black guy in SNL was just in case something in the news happens, we have you. Like, Chris Rock has been critical of them for that in the past.
Right.
So that they were kind of tiptoeing around getting into that, but they don't really address it. And yet they have, is it Willem Dafoe that says to Chevy Chase at some point, like, you're white and you're a Gentile. That matters.
Right, for Carson.
So they're kind of doing that, but also not really getting into it, which I thought was weird.
Right. And I think, Jeff, when we talked about, you mentioned this too, there's a real... It's almost a blatant, like, just copy and paste of Birdman the first, like, 20 minutes.
I told you this. I was seeing with somebody who I know who fucking hates Birdman. And the first 10 seconds of the movie, they turn to me, they go, is this just going to be fucking Birdman? Because that's exactly what it felt like. Like, the music, the way they're moving around, like the small studio spaces. It's like Birdman broadcast. I mean, you can see the influences.
Yeah,
like what it's from.
It reminded me a lot of Studio 62, which was also had a lot of the Sorkin Show, which had a lot of people like they're like, oh, we're so tortured by our comedy genius, and then after 20 minutes they do a scene that's like not remotely funny. You're kind of like, oh, well, okay.
The music, I'm glad you mentioned the music too, because I was distracted.
I actually liked the music. I thought the score was pretty good.
I didn't love.
Do you think so, Jeff, or no?
Yeah, because I think I like the franticness of it. Like, it made it feel.
I think it actually fit the movie.
I get the idea, but again, my problem was like, well, this works out. I'm not like, oh, because like Uncut Gems is kind of like the music in particular reminded me a little of Punch Drunk Love, where like it was getting like loud and distracting. And I get in that movie, that's what it is for the whole time. So that's what they were going for. This, I was like, well, they filmed the show, Like,
that's another good point.
I know that already.
That's another good point with the movie. Is like it's like. The stakes are already, like, we know what happened.
It's been on for 50 years. That's why I'm saying maybe make it about a different show where it's based on SNL or something. Again, I know that doesn't make as much money. Right. But then you're at least thinking, like, does this thing get on the air?
I think it's better just if they had just focused on the season. Like,
Yeah.
it's one of the few times where I think if they took their time and like, so 'cause I do think like, look, Reitman's a smart guy. Obviously, he grew up around all these people. Like, he knows that if he's not making shit up, he's moving stuff around. You know, that's one of the few times where, like, you know, it'd almost be better if it was 8-episode Netflix series, you know, where they took their time. Like, there's no reason to like slam all this down our throats over an hour and 40 minutes. Like, 8 episodes where, you know, an episode is about Carson. An episode is about Chevy. An episode is about Dick Ebersol.
Yeah.
That could work.
Yeah, I didn't realize that too, because both you and Jeff are the two people that showed me the trailer when we were in Chicago, and it looked like it was going to be a disaster. So it was a lot better than the trailer.
That's true. That's true.
Which is
way better than the trailer. Trailer was, when they had that moment where the Don Pardo character's like, what does he say?
Ackaro.
How the fuck do you say this?
Yeah. Which did not work in the movie either.
No. It was, and that was just a thing. Like, wouldn't it be funny if a guy with that voice said this?
Right.
You know?
Fuck.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I think it would have worked better long form. It just, yeah. I mean, you know, again, like, it's just comes down to, like I said the other day, you know, so Willem Dafoe plays essentially the guy running NBC.
Yeah.
Real life guy who in real life, by the way, was very supportive of Saturday Night at the time. But like, the whole thing is that they're like, as Dick Ebersol later tells Lorne Michaels, it's this whole long game to piss Carson off in the negotiation point. They're never going to put the show on the air at all.
Right.
Well, right away, you know that's bullshit. Like, that just is not a real thing. They're not going to hire people, hire stage people, hire union people, fly in affiliates to come hang around the first weekend, bring an audience in, worry about contracts to be like, we're going to run. It's like that. That is a lame premise that holds no real weight.
No, and did Carson hate SNL? I really hated the scene where I genuinely think Chris Klemmer would have been a better Carson on the phone.
I think he considered it. I think he read for it.
I was annoyed by that, and the idea that Lorne Michaels is like, yeah, whatever, not even listen to the phone call. Like, that scene bugged me also. But Carson didn't hate SNL for like years. It wasn't until like Dana Carvey that he really started to hate
I think he always had a weird relationship with them because they did they did present themselves like the young hip guys.
Yeah.
So I think if you looked at he didn't have a ton of SNL people on early on, over the years. They didn't fill in a lot. He liked Chevy, but Chevy left after a year.
Yeah.
So, and even in the movie, they're like, at one point, like that, and the other part where Chevy's like, I guess I'll probably leave. Like, he's talking about leaving after a year before the first episode even happens. But yeah, that Carson phone call scene was, I don't know what you thought, Jeff. That was a weird one.
Tell you what, no respect for Johnny Carson.
Shit, his mouth.
Hey, really. Like, if you're someone who doesn't know Johnny Carson and you watch that, you're like, man, that guy was a real piece of shit, huh? That guy sucked.
Yeah.
It was very weird.
Yeah, and that's what I keep thinking of is like, if this is for people that don't really know the history of SNL, I can't imagine what they got out of it, because then it's just confusing.
Yeah, what did you, Jeff, like, what did you like? You said you like, what parts did you like?
All the stuff. I mean, like, I like the Willem Dafoe stuff. I like the beginning stuff, them putting it all together. And I think there's some of the characters that worked well that they focused on. I liked anything that was with Chevy. I liked any of the Dan Aykroyd stuff. I love the Milton Berle stuff, because I think that was a perfect way to represent what they were trying to say of, like, you know, old comedy, new comedy, you know, these young people. Like, I don't think Milton Berle dropped his dick in front of them.
I think that's safe to say.
I think upon a second viewing, I'll like that scene. I was just like, this is so ridiculous. It was a good scene.
Yeah, I like his.
Yeah, like that was my favorite scene in the movie, because I think it established everything they wanted to say in a very, in a funny way. But like, yeah, so like, for me, my main issue with this in my review on my Letterboxd, I said, it's too unfocused in spots. That's my biggest issue. And I think that maybe goes to what Kirk said about maybe making it more long form, because like, I don't think you needed, like, the Billy Crystal thing was unbelievably
total waste of time.
Pay it off.
Yeah. Why isn't he even in it?
Right. Yeah, they tried to introduce you to everyone in the SNL world in 90 minutes.
So this way, Billy Crystal went on to become a nobody. That is not in the movie.
Right.
Like, they're just being in there so we can be like, oh, I'm Billy Crystal. And you're like, oh, okay. Like, you're right, Jeff. There's literally no payoff, none.
Like, you use Birdman as a good example, because it basically it feels like a rip of Birdman from the beginning. Birdman, the entire time, that I would say 85-90% of that movie, you see the supporting characters, but Regan Thompson, the Michael Keaton character, is with them most of the time.
Right.
That's one of those things where this one, it's like it bounces around too many people where it should have just really been mostly about Lauren the entire time, and you almost never leave him. And it's still probably like 60, 70%, but I think you just need to focus it a little more on it more being about him and the others kind of playing off in the background. And then you could have maybe like the one breakout scene with Milton Berle and Chevy Chase. But I think it gets to like, you don't need the scene with Garrett Morris and Jane Curtin like sitting up in like the seats. Like that was the stuff that I thought was just you got too far away from the point you were trying to make.
See, I thought the thing I liked about the Milton Berle Chevy Chase scene, I was like, this scene's like alive. Like Milton Berle's a cynical old fuck whose time is now it's like made up.
And now Chevy Chase is that guy.
Now Chevy Chase is completely that guy. Right. Yeah, he's even worse. So I like, but there's stuff like there's just unrealized. Like they kept teasing this. First of all, I didn't give a fuck about this triangle between Lauren, Dan Aykroyd, and Rosie Schuster. I don't even understand it. And then they tease like a Lorraine Newman has a crush on Dan Aykroyd. I'm like, they don't even answer that.
I wanted to ask you, because you guys are much more well-versed in this stuff than I am. Is that a thing that was a big scandal? Like,
that was known.
Lauren Michaels, so Rosie Schuster and Lauren Michaels, did they have this, like, I know they were getting divorced, apparently, but they don't really establish what their relationship is because they kind of make it seem like she married him under weird circumstances. They're not really married anymore. Like, I didn't get that, and I would think that'd be something more talked about.
It's a big part of the book I read. Not a big part, but yeah, she was in a relationship with Aykroyd, and they were kind of separated or not together with Lauren. But that also felt, to me, Jeff, like very... like it was like a female Sorkin character where she's just propping up the guys,
Yes.
Where she's like, oh, if you only knew what a comedic genius you were, John, like fly away and make us all laugh, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, probably by the biggest, like, I'm not counting like JK, like probably the biggest star in the cast right now. Played Rosie Schuster, right? I would say. I mean,
I guess so.
She's on the rise anyway. No.
Yeah.
So I mean, it felt like a very. It was almost like a very old school, like there to prop up the boys character, which I guess at the time probably she was,
and also there to I guess have some sort of romantic feel to the movie. They're like, will she use his last name? But they never quite got into it. That might have to do with the length of the movie and the fact that there were too many characters. But it felt just like useless because they never explored it really.
Well, I guess I'd ask you guys like. Watching the movie, do you give a shit while you're watching it? What last name she uses in the credits? Like,
no.
Who cares? Like, I didn't care.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I said too when I left, I thought it was significantly closer to being really great than it was really bad, but it had a couple like core issues, and one of them, like I just said, being the fact that it just didn't focus on the right main thing. That just kind of brought it down. Where again, and the big difference is I just don't care about the historical inaccuracy thing doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
And that goes, and I'm about to name like a bunch of fucking Aaron Sorkin things, ironically. Steve Jobs. I mean, the Steve Jobs movie is just absurdly inaccurate. Moneyball has issues. Social Network. But like, I just don't care about that. Yeah. So that's probably the big difference. If I cared about it, I'd probably have this in like the fucking 60s, if I was being honest. So
yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like, for example, there's no way that like he had a 3-hour show that night and they had to cut it to an hour and a half.
Right.
Like, there's no fucking chance. Like, they've been working on it for months. Like that, I'm sure, knowing Lauren Michaels, that show was already tight and ready to go.
So maybe is there something to this maybe where like I'm well versed enough in SNL that I was sitting there the whole time saying like I don't know if that happened. I don't know dick about how Apple was founded.
Right.
So maybe it's that for people. Maybe it's similar to that or the Social Network, whatever inaccuracies that might have, where it's like, if you just don't know that, who cares?
Sure.
Maybe
although
it's that for a lot of people.
Although it hasn't resonated, like it made like $3 million the first weekend.
Right.
And the audience score for it was only a B+, which sounds good, but in like cinema score is not great. So I do think if you're, I don't know, you said you saw with people who don't watch SNL, were they like into it at all, or were they confused?
They thought it was a nice, fun movie, and like okay,
yeah,
that's basically like what their review.
I don't think that's unfair.
I could see if I knew nothing.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of people I've talked to who love this movie.
I know it's weird. I've read a couple. When it first came out, there was like Oscar buzz, and people were like, "This is going to be great," and I was like, "This."
I think that's crazy. But do you guys think any of the actors will be like the guy that played Chevy Chase? Will he be considered at all?
No Oscar nominations in this. not a single. I mean, if you had to pick, obviously nothing has a chance, but I don't know the score. I have no idea. I don't know. It looked good.
The music probably gets some, and it looked good.
It did look good.
It was on film.
Yeah, it looked good. But yeah, no.
A couple more characters I wanted to address with you too. One I messaged Jeff about. Is Michael O'Donoghue the coolest guy that's ever lived?
Oh man,
like does he just walk in every room and know exactly what to say?
He did have a great line. It's actually in the book where somebody walked in the writer's room and they just found out they were like Elvis died, and there was a pause and he looked at his notes. He looked up and he said, "Huh, good career move."
That's good.
Which is a good line. That's a good line. But yeah, it's like I would have been. How annoyed you've been working with that fucking guy?
Right.
Like you write for an NBC show. Let's not make it out like you're happily taking the NBC money. That scene, first of all, the idea that there's like this uber religious lady like scratching out stuff in front of them is like, but again, it's like if you want to go see a movie, then you kind of have to have that lady do that. I guess.
And that I'm willing to suspect. Like in 19.
I hated that character in the movie. Hated it.
Michael O'Donoghue or the woman?
Both. But Michael O'Donoghue, I really hated.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. And then he has that line to Carlin where he snaps back at him. And to me, that felt like something we might say now. If Carlin was at a roast now,
right,
it might say you're leeching off the corpse of Lenny Bruce or whatever they said. Would you have said that in 1975? 74, rather?
Yeah. He wasn't afraid of him. That was I also have to say, What's His Face was not bad as George Carlin.
That's the other character I wanted to say to you. I hated it because it was just, he might as well have come out and said, shit, piss, fuck, cunt, motherfucker.
But I feel like it wasn't his fault, though. I'm not blaming him. Like, the role isn't great. Like, I thought was, what's his name, Jeff? From The Americans, Jesus.
Fuck.
He's married to Kerry Russell now, right? What the hell's his name? I can never pronounce his last name. The lead in that Mr. Rogers movie. But yeah,
fucking why can't I remember? Matthew Rhys, right? Matthew Rhys.
Yeah. Like you almost didn't need him in the movie.
I told you I didn't think he was going to be because in the beginning, when Lauren tries to go say something to him, he slams the door.
Oh right, yeah.
Oh, they're gonna. It's like that's how they're gonna get around George Carlin. Like they're just not gonna show him. But
if I remember the line correctly, I think it was literally. Fuck. Like they just come out and say fuck 400 times. And it's like, we get it. He's cursed a lot, but he was a man. He was a human being.
I also don't remember. Maybe Carlin was that cranky about doing it, but like, I don't think he would have been that cranky about doing it. He did it. Like, I don't think it was that big of a deal.
He did it, and he wasn't like George Carlin yet.
Right.
You know,
he's big, but
Class Clown came out 3 years earlier. I think 2 years earlier. So
yeah, still a huge comedy figure, but yeah.
Is there an SNL storyline that you think would be worth making a 90-minute movie over? Because I agreed with you. I thought it was going to at least start, even if it was the 90 minutes before the show. I thought there would be a scene before the credits or something where it's like, Lorne Michaels is at some improv school, like not UCB, but Second City, something like that, and is just like, who's this Chevy Chase guy? Something. Yeah. I thought there would be something like that, or he'd hear the radio show that Chase and Belushi were on, or something. There was no setup at all. So I think if they had done something like that, and maybe a longer form, but is there an SNL storyline that you guys think there could be a movie about?
Go ahead, Jeff.
That would be worth doing.
Jeez, I don't think so. Because I think the only thing that like what's the most realistic thing that they'd make a movie about? Probably like Chris Farley
or Belushi, but that we've heard a million times.
I think that's probably it. Which I don't want to see that.
No. I think the thing that would be most interesting to me, maybe behind the scenes, I'd want to watch if I had to pick one, would be Lauren leaving and Gene Dominion taking over. Those couple of years when
and
it's
then coming
a mess,
back.
and then Lauren coming back, like sort of Lauren in the wilderness, the show a disaster, like Ebersol running it. All the shit. Eddie becomes a huge star, but there's the problem. Now somebody has to play Eddie Murphy.
Right.
Like, how the fuck do you do that? You play Eddie Murphy in 1982? He's a rocket ship. Somebody has to play Gilbert. Somebody has to play. It's like that's the problem you always run into with these movies. The same thing with Farley. Same thing with Belushi. Like, you can play Chevy because he's so deadpan. Like, you can do that, but these big, huge stars. Tough to do. Like, I don't think you can do it, but I do think, like, I've always been interested in those years, like those weird years where Lauren wasn't there and it was kind of like, it was really on the edge of being canceled. Ebersol pieced it together, and then Lauren comes back and just like moves Ebersol to the side again. The Ebersol-Lauren relationship to me, which still goes on, by the way, like Ebersol still shows up on Saturday Night a lot and just sits next to Lauren during the show. Still to this day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, they've been friends for 50 years.
Yeah, the Ebersol scene was great. Like,
Great
I think we said that on the show yesterday. That
Great
was
scene.
a legitimately great. But again, you're taken out of it because you're like, there's like 3 minutes before this fucking show starts.
Yeah,
That was why
also-
Bell just got hired.
It also makes Lauren out to be like a fucking retard. Like he has no idea this is happening. Like he's a smart guy. So
Now, a month before the show goes on the
Sure.
air, that speech is great because like you said, Lauren would probably maybe not think about
But
it.
again, I keep going back to they brought in that scene where Lauren's with Chevy's there and Belushi's there. They're shaking hands with all these affiliate owners all around the country. Defoe flies in like 100 affiliate owners for a show that he's going to pull the plug on.
Yeah.
2 seconds before. I mean, we even talked about the ending, which is Defoe being like at the end being like, "Run that baby." Like, he's like in there with them. It's just not And I thought, by the way, I thought Defoe, as always, like honestly, no surprise. The two best performances in the movie are probably Willem Dafoe and J.K. Simmons.
Yes.
I mean, they're the two best actors in the cast.
I would say so.
In their meaty roles.
You agree with that, Jeff? Those are probably the two best?
Probably, yeah.
The guy who played Chevy was good. He was good.
I thought
Corey
he was
Michael
very
Smith
good,
Yeah, he was good, and it felt like, again, this is my issue with the Belushi thing. It felt like a genuine like portrayal of where like the Belushi thing felt like to me. I'd stick with that. I said, well, outside of Ebersol and Lauren Michaels, I would say in terms of cast, like it's definitely Chevy and Aykroyd, but the Belushi thing just felt it just felt like a character of it. That's what he felt like. It felt like such a like an over exaggeration of him. And I know he's a wacky guy, but it's like him just being all grumpy and making noises and the ice skating thing. That one just felt that's the one that felt the worst.
Also, in the theater, I'm asking myself, like, why is he so tortured about this? Like, what's the problem? Like, you did Second City, you did like National Lampoon, right? Like, why can't you do SNL? Like, what's the? Yeah,
and he did. So I guess the part that's historically accurate is Belushi did sign 5 minutes before the show started.
Right, that's true.
But it was more. It seemed like it was more like he wanted a particular. I'm blanking on the guy's name now, but he wanted him to manage him. It was not this
Bernie
like
Brillstein?
Yes, yeah. He wanted him as his manager. It wasn't this like he's out in the wilderness looking for Lauren Michaels to come and save him. It was
Bernie
kind of just
Brillstein,
contractual
a huge figure in SNL, by the way, and in comedy. Is in there for like 2 seconds. I think he gives Lauren the phone when Carson calls.
Yeah.
Like that's it. But yeah. The other thing I was wrong about in the show yesterday, I think Jeff, you told me this too.
We were talking about this on the way in, on your way in, I think.
The Milton Berle thing.
97%.
Yeah, he got a 9, which I still like. How is that fucking possible?
It's only 3 stations, baby.
I know, but
I
still.
looked up again yesterday. He was up against nothing.
I mean, there must have been a blank. Like one of the networks must have been blank.
Like nothing. Like like the 3% not watching just weren't watching TV.
Is it just that at that time there's only 3 stations and Milton Berle's just such a huge star that enough people?
There weren't that many TVs.
Is it, and maybe could it have been a 97 share as opposed to?
Yeah, I think it was 97.
Yeah.
Share.
Okay. Yeah.
The crazy thing is, like, if you're gonna make a story out of any of the people in this, a movie like a biopic or anything, it's probably Ebersol. Like, if you were to do anything, like not like I mean,
well, Ebersol's career is unbelievable.
Right. I mean,
yeah.
You go this, you go WWE, you go XFL, Olympics, plane crash.
Oh, true. Yeah, NBC Sports. Like he negotiated. Like Ebersol is a super. They undersold him a little bit. Like he's the guy. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's a huge deal for NBC. When NBC got football back, he was like, "Yeah, we'll take it back." But at end of the year in these Sunday night games, sometimes they're bad. We need to flex these games in. Like we want to be able to do that. And they're like, "Oh, it's a good idea." Like he was always thinking stuff like that. He worked with Roone Arledge. He was. I read his book a couple of years ago. Yeah, right. His son died in a plane crash. Married to a very famous sitcom star. Like he's married to her for better in SNL for like 40 years, almost 50 years. A huge Ebersol's probably one of the 15 most important people in the history of television, and nobody ever talks about him.
Well, the way
Father of the Olympics. He walks.
Yeah.
Who knows better than
I
Jeff?
worked there in
That's
2012. True. I worked at the media center in 2012 in London, and you want to talk about someone who walks around with a big swinging dick, knowing he runs the place. He an endlessly lit cigar, just walking around, no matter where he is.
That's an old school guy thing you don't see anymore. I like that.
Oh, for sure. And by the way, he played a huge role. Bill Carter wrote about in the second book. Played a huge role in putting Leno back, pushing Cohen out and putting Leno back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was a guy who just people at NBC just like, and he wasn't wrong. He was like, look, I like Cohen. He's a funny guy, but he's not built for 11:30. If you put Jay back, he'll be #1 again. Is he as funny as Conan? No, but is he safer for America? Yes.
Right.
Like he just knew things. Like, and I don't think there's any way SNL works without him. No way.
The way things go, maybe that kid will get a spinoff on Peacock or something.
That's
Ebersol.
true. Could be.
I wanted to talk to you about the ending because you just mentioned it, but it reminded me that why is Nicholas Braun, the kid from Succession, why was he playing
We were talking
two
about
characters?
this, Jeff. I don't fucking know.
He's just best suited for
What's
both
his
of them?
You know, it was originally cast. Did you see this, Jeff? It was originally cast. Was Benny Safdie.
For who?
I think Duel also.
Oh, why was that so important?
Why?
Is there a connection we're missing between Jim Henson and Andy
He's also
Kaufman?
like 12 feet tall. Like, you probably didn't see him, Mike.
Kaufman was 6'1".
Yeah. How tall is this guy? 6'8"?
And Nicholas Braun is 6'7", which
how
Gabriel
tall
Bell
is
must be like 5'2".
Yeah, Gabriel Bell looks like So if you watch the first scene, Mike, if you see them walking in together, the first scene is him and Kaufman. You know, when they walk in, he looks like I'm watching. I'm like, is this a Kaufman bit that I didn't know about? Where he like had stilts on? He literally looked like he was like 12 feet tall. And and then he plays the same. I got to admit, like, look, I like Jim Henson like everybody else. You could have cut every Jim Henson fucking thing out of that movie.
Well, it's a thing where they wanted to be like, and Jim Henson was there. That's how crazy this was.
You just say that. Like Albert Brooks, I never showed him. He's in it.
Right.
You know, I would love to see Albert. You know, I love Albert Brooks, but like, why isn't you ever do Albert Brooks on the show or no?
We have not yet.
Oh, one of my favorites.
Don't offer to do it because I'll ask
2026. But yeah, but you're right. Like that felt like a purposely quirky, obviously piece of, like, we're gonna have the same guy play these two total opposites.
Is that why you think? Because they're
I don't know. I mean, I never liked that movies anyway. Like, oh, here's makes me think of what's his face? The character. His last name is Portnoy, that Jack Black plays.
Oh, Jeff Portnoy.
Yeah, Jeff Portnoy.
Yes.
You know, he's like, what's up? It's the
Chubbies or something like that.
It's a knockoff of the Eddie Murphy one.
Nutty Professor.
Yeah. Where that's I always like. I remember Brendan Fraser did that in the movie. Like when you play, Eddie did a bunch of times. You play 20 people and like Martin.
But
Lawrence.
those are star. Like they just said, let Eddie Murphy fucking go.
That's true.
Why? And it made no sense. There was no reason for it.
We were talking about that, Jeff. Right? Like it's just super bizarre.
I also there was a moment too where I convinced myself with the Nicholas Braun thing that he wasn't playing Jim Henson, and I'm like, that's not him. I'm like,
It's also like
surely that's somebody else.
Like I get like it's like the Mr. Rogers thing. Like I get that Jim Henson was like a sensitive guy, but they make him out to be like he's a 2-year-old.
Right.
Like it's like he wasn't that dumb, but you know. I guess
where are my notes? Do I not have the notes?
He's like, can you please stop writing down that these crazy, you know, rebellious writers want to fuck a Muppet. Like I'm like, we get it. These guys are like anti-establishment. Jim Henson's a square.
Yeah.
Like that stuff, like get rid of it. You know, you're rushing to get this movie done. Like, why do I need Jim Henson? Why do I need Billy? It felt like there was like, okay, you're right, Mike. Like, oh, you know, not only do we have Chevy Chase and John Belushi, but we also have Kermit the Frog.
Yeah, isn't that?
Which also,
wacky?
by the way, made no sense. But they got rid of it quickly. Same with the Albert Brooks movies.
And just real quick about the ending. Jeff wrote that he loved it. He was like, the ending is a great. Unless you're referring to the Lorne Michaels Dick Ebersol thing, I'm curious what you're talking about.
You must mean the ending, right? Like the ending, like the last 2 minutes.
I mean, like the ending. I just like how it ended. I like that they ended it the way they did.
You mean like the very last, like the Chevy's weekend update?
No. I mean, straight up, just I just like that they went right into the first skit.
Oh, okay.
They said Live in New York, and they ended it.
Got you.
I thought it at least ended with a little like, because look, if you're gonna be a schmaltzy like cheese fest at times like that, you do need to end it at least somewhat in that like emotional, like it was like a nice like good nostalgic like bump to end it. I'm not saying the whole end. I'm not saying the final.
I think that's fair. But if you're gonna go and make that kind of movie, like you might like. But it was weird to me that they're like Lorne gives that speech where he's like the whole time he can't figure out what SNL is, and he finally is like, it's a place where, you know, you're in the back of a bar on a Saturday night. You know that speech he gives, and I was like, this is weird. And like, what the fuck is he talking about?
That's not that's a good speach in a pitch meeting.
Sure,
I kind of like that.
But like, it never crosses mind till then.
He never thought of. Yeah, he pitched the show already.
Like I don't. You know,
I did think they were going to end it with like live New York at Saturday night, and then you go in the control room and they're high five. Like that would have sucked.
Oh,
like I think they ended it like the only way they could have at that point.
I'll tell you what a great ending would have been if it's like the NBC guy's like, yeah, we're not doing the show, and it just ends. It's just completely inaccurate. It's just like, yeah, no, sorry, we're doing Carson reruns on Saturdays.
It would be unbelievable if they ended it with Clemmer doing a full Carson monologue. Like they go with Carson.
Yeah, or him just
Clemmer just rolls out and does a monologue.
I don't like this Michaels kid.
What is going on with Gerald Ford?
him in his house watching the first one. Pretty funny, and then it ends.
He's just Clemmer dialing the Kirk Minihane show for the first time.
Yeah, it was yeah. I mean, the faux character's a device, but like, put it this way, like, definitely necessary one. Like, what's that movie without him?
Oh, sure.
Reitman clearly was like, you know what? This guy's a real person who liked SNL, but I need a fucking bad guy.
Yeah.
Like I have to have a bad guy because it doesn't work. So let's bring in. Literally, they have Milton Berle come from a show that he's working on. And he just rolled. I'll tell you, they have not a lot to do with like an hour to go before the show because they're just hanging out. They're ice skating. They're fucking running around. They're hiring writers. They're at bars. They're arguing with each other. They're lying on the ground. There's just a ton of stuff going on. I actually liked, what I actually thought worked? I'll give you a small one. I actually thought the Frank and Davis thing worked. They'd check in with them once in a while and they were like working on stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's not a bad device.
That's probably what there should have been with everyone else, right?
Right. Yes, that's right. As opposed to like long drawn out sketches. Because they were working on the Blender one or something, the Julia Child one.
Oh yeah.
Like that was like, I was like, okay, that's kind of like they I like the idea that this is going on like in the hallways while he's running around trying to like, I'm like, that's good. When they slow down and they do like Belushi's whining or Gilda's being, I'm like, this sucks. Yeah. But like stuff I liked when they were in the hallway, like running around. I didn't like when they were in the studio itself.
Yeah, I thought it should have been more about Brad Garrett's character, if I'm being honest.
That was a weird, weird moment. Like, first of all, the jokes, like, you're like reading the jokes, and he's like, "You're hired." Like, why is he hired?
The jokes were bad, unless again, it's a '70s thing where like it was funny then or something. I don't know.
I mean, like, if you think, right, that's the thing. I think if you think about that stamp for a prostitute joke,
yeah,
in 1975, when the world was Milton Berle at that point. It's kind of like sitcoms before All in the Family or something. Like that is like a crazy joke to make in 74 or 75.
Yeah. That was the one other thing I wanted to say was I hated at the beginning. Is it the Teamsters or the lighting guys or whoever they are?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, really happy to be working on this on a Saturday night.
Right.
It's like it's a national television. All in the Family was on Saturday nights.
That was
like
a huge lineup.
It wasn't this like, oh, we have to do this type of a thing. It was television.
I was like these union guys who were so locked in the whole time. At the end, we're like, you know what? These guys got something. Let's break these rules and start building.
Laying these bricks.
Like, oh, all right.
Brick by brick, we got it.
Yeah, we'll help the brick. We'll help it.
Yeah, it's like, all right, I guess so.
The scene you made, if you were asking me the thing I laughed probably the hardest of it probably was the Aykroyd. It was about the Julia Child skit.
I thought that was actually genuinely funny. Yeah, I actually laughed at that. Yeah, I thought that was actually pretty good. And maybe that's the movie. Maybe the movie is like I actually really like the Tracy Letts scene with Chevy Chase where he tells him what he's going to be.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm talking about? Where he's like, yeah, you'll be famous for a couple of years and then you're going to be on. He basically lays out what Chevy Chase is. To me, the two best scenes in the movie are older guys telling Chevy Chase what an asshole he is.
Yeah.
Like,
And I'm glad that could have been. I thought it was going to be more exactly what Chevy Chase's life was. I'm glad it wasn't that.
Right. He played Herb Sargent, who was a great old writer. And like and he was in the movie again. I'm like, oh, I want to see this I want to see this room again. Like, bring me back here.
Yeah.
I didn't realize Tracy Letts was in it, and you see, I was like, oh, I loved. Tracy Letts is awesome.
It's great.
And then he's not. That's it. He's not.
Yeah, like I'd rather see him than trying to figure out like I don't care that like Jane Curtin is stuck playing this. Like I don't care about her. This horrible plight that she's on an NBC show, but she's a nobody.
Right. Yeah. Same with Garrett Morris.
Yeah. Right. Any of them, they were all nobodies. So I didn't, and yeah, I thought, overall. So if it's by the Jeff, I'd give it like a 76, 78. Because there are parts it's not a disaster.
That's more. I would have said maybe 70, which it sounds like that's more what Jeff is.
Right.
That's what an 82 on the low scale is.
Right. Yes, that's right. I think.
Yeah. I mean, a part of it is too, like I've seen what I'm up to. I'm up to like 280 movies this year. I see so much absolute utter dog shit that like,
right.
naturally, like, I mean, I'm just like, someone may like really hate this, but like, I've seen so many worse things. It's just not on that scale. It's just not gonna be that low.
It is interesting though. After he does Juno in 2007, big hit.
Yeah,
Oscar nominated for Best Picture and Director. 2 years later, does Up in the Air, big hit. Best Director nomination, Best Picture nomination, Screenplay nomination. This guy, Jason Reitman, is one of the 5 biggest directors in Hollywood, probably. You're like, where is this guy going the next 15 years?
Yeah.
And he got stuck in the Ghostbusters world, and he directs this weird Saturday movie that didn't really resonate. Like, he is like sort of nowhere now. It's a
yeah. I didn't realize I didn't realize he was Juno up in the. And there's another one right in that time. It was like they were all right in a row.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, he had a run.
And then there's Smoke. Thank You for Smoke, I think, is a good movie too, which is before that.
Yeah.
People know that movie.
And I like Young Adult. The movie did after that a lot with Charlize and Patton Oswalt. So I don't know where it went wrong, but now he's just kind of floundering. He got stuck, like I said. He got in this. I mean, it's almost psychologically interesting. Like, this is clearly a guy. He's doing the Ghostbusters movies that his dad directed, and now he's doing these SNL movies with like guys who worked with his dad a lot. You know, like the Aykroyds and the Chevys of the world. So I wonder if it's something going on there. I don't know, but
Aykroyd praised the accuracy of this movie.
Right. I mean, you know, right. I mean, he's tied into his dad big time. So I don't know. Like, I mean, was it a well-directed movie? It looked good. But like from a storytelling perspective, you know, I don't know.
It had no direction really. So
I'm looking at his filmography here. It's kind of like, you know, I mean, my God, Jeff, I forgot about this one. You want to see a movie that's wild? He directed the fucking Gary Hart movie, The Front Runner, with
I literally have it. I was just about to say it.
With fucking Hugh Jackman playing Gary Hart from the 88 presidential scandal. It's crazy.
All right, gentlemen. Anything I missed that you wanted to get into, or should we wrap this up?
I'm trying to think, because it's a good question about if I could. Those SNL movies have to be so
broad,
isolated, or isolated on like that, like the writer's room. But then if you like, to me, like that guy, like if you have a toned down O'Donoghue working with like Herb Sargent, working with like Chevy. Chevy's a big writer, season 1, huge,
right?
And Lorne, like that is more interesting to me maybe than something else.
I think maybe if you did a mini series, each season being like a decade or something. Because, like, Sinead O'Connor could be an interesting episode.
For sure.
Norm getting fired
Dice
could be an interesting episode.
Yeah.
Dice, yeah. There would be a lot of interesting episodes. I just don't know about a 90-minute movie, like what they could do, really. Unless it's, again, Farley or Belushi or something like that. But
I also don't know, Jeff, maybe, I don't think they harbored any idea this was going to be a big hit, right? Like, do they overestimate what SNL means today?
I think they thought it'd be a bigger hit than this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like, because I remember when we saw the trailer, it seemed like they were going for like, and the time of year they released it. It seems like they thought maybe an Oscar.
I guess. Also, like, does the average film goer, I'm just thinking like the average movie goer who doesn't know anything about SNL, do they walk in the theater, sit down, and see J.K. Simmons, first of all, know who that is, and secondly, are they supposed to be fully aware that this man has like a famously huge dick?
Right. No, I mean, Justin didn't know. You know what I mean? Like that age group, I wouldn't think so. I think it's weird that I probably, like, me and Jeff are around the same age.
If it wasn't for Stern, I probably wouldn't have known. Like, he had
I don't think most people our age know that.
Yeah, it's just
I was
just gonna say, or even know who Milton Berle is to begin with. But sorry, Jeff.
There was a 10-second window the other day where, despite absolutely knowing who J.K. Simmons was, Justin thought for a second that was actually
Milton Berle playing in the film. That is true. Famous joke writer from our.
In the middle of the movie, I looked up. I'll say I guess I would say anything else in the movie. I looked up Lamorne Morris on his Wikipedia page just to see, like, because I was like trying to think of what else he's done. And under the personal life section, it says comedian Garrett Morris. And so I saw that and I was like, oh shit. And I actually told the people I was with, and I talked to some other people. I said, he's Garrett Morris's son. That's pretty cool. I should have read further on because the next line is no relation. But I didn't know for like 3 days.
I thought the same thing when I saw the last name too.
So did I.
Yeah.
I have my right hand. I bought this at the used bookstore a couple weeks ago. I love stuff like this. It's a New York Times Encyclopedia of Television, 1977 edition. Ooh. So you basically go through. It has little paragraphs on everybody or every show that's ever happened in television. And Milton Berle was called by other comedians the thief of bad gags, which is a knock on Baghdad.
Yeah.
And then, but he was so popular, and this is kind of what they get to in the movie. This book was written in 77. He hadn't done anything for years. NBC had him signed through a contract through 1981. Even then, he wasn't doing anything. He was so important to the history of the network And I do think there was something to, they allude to it briefly, because this ties in one of the other times I was on here, is when you were talking about being a Gentile to Chevy.
Yeah.
Like, he was definitely, NBC wanted him, he was like the lead to replace Carson in their mind for years.
Right.
Like, until he became a huge movie star. Like, even after season 1, when he's famously sort of on the cover of New York Magazine, nobody else was. Like, he was going to take over for Carson. Right.
But, I mean, by the time Carson left, that's just an old guy for an old guy.
Right. He was also a huge movie star and had that. But, like, they were constantly, that was 75, right? They were constantly looking for Carson. They were, at that point, they were like, well, Johnny's getting old.
Right.
That was 75.
20 years almost.
16 more years, 17 more years. So that search was always ongoing, even then, always. And, you know, the Carson thing about the movie is, I think, if I'm getting it right, Carson wanted to do 4 days a week already at that point, right?
Yeah, so that's what I saw, is that he was negotiating for less day. That's the thing I didn't understand about why he would give a fuck about
we talked, they didn't explain that well, I didn't think.
Because I thought Carson wanted syndication more for the nights Mondays and Fridays, like when he wasn't on the air.
Right. I didn't know if he wanted a bigger syndication slice.
Maybe.
The other thing is Saturday night, the first, let me look it up. It's in my book right here. Let me see. Saturday night, the first year, it was 3 Saturdays a month. The fourth Saturday a month was the News Magazine Weekend. So it was almost like a whatever, Nightline kind of show.
Might surprise you. We don't usually get this kind of insight with Craig.
So I'm here for.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, not many people buy the New York Times Encyclopedia Television 1977 and pour through it.
Saying.
So yeah, there you go. That's why I'm here.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate taking some of your time.
I'm as I didn't know this was a perk as an executive gearhead. I didn't know I get to come on the show every once in a while.
That is. Yeah, that's true of anyone. If you subscribe to the Patreon, please. Thank you, Jeff. Anyone can come on. I'm usually just looking to kill time, so you can come on any show you want.
What grade would you give him? What number would you give him? Like 70?
I said about 70. Because, maybe if I watch it again, like the Milton Berle stuff might make me laugh more. I was just annoyed when
I especially very cynical by yourself, angry in the theater watching this.
It was so funny. You just said, like, I give it an 80.
82. 94. I liked it. Yeah, it was really good.
But there were times where I was like, this can't be. Because I can't see the time that they put up. Yeah. I'm like, they must be flashing back to, like, March or something.
Well, I'll tell you what. One final thing. So throughout the movie, they say it's like, whatever, 9:30, 10:26.
Yeah.
There is a lot that goes on between like 11:02 and 11:16.
Yeah.
There is a fucking lot going on.
I actually hated that move of showing the time.
Yeah, why would they do that?
I think it takes away a little bit from how, like, you're like, oh shit, like this thing's we gotta move. Like, I would have got lost in that more. And I think that was it's not a huge deal. Like,
you can even have like an aide or somebody say, hey, 20 minutes or like just pop. Like, yeah, I felt like it slowed things down. And I was getting frustrated. I was like, well, what the fuck? Like, it's 11:08? Like, why? So now Ebersol, he literally leaves, walks down the street, talks to Belushi at the ice skate, then goes to a bar.
Yeah.
Hires a writer, and then goes back. Like, what?
All right, now we're all good, guys.
It's the biggest night of his life.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Right. When does the Geniuses premiere?
Ooh, what a pop for us.
Yeah, that's right. Get ready for the blind mic bump.
Look out. Fine. The table is turned.
I think it's an exclusive.
Ooh. It won't be next week, but
I don't even know.
Why Are You Laughing exclusive to Geniuses on Barstool Sports, November 5th, I believe.
Wow. That's very exciting.
I'll officially be 50 years old, like the Champions Tour itself, competing with the Geniuses.
Competing with the kids, though. I like it.
Young people.
Yeah.
I know. You think those kids know about the 1973 NBC lineup like I do now?
I doubt it.
Probably not.
But find out November 5th, folks.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you, boys. And we'll see you later on Why You Laughing.
Zip it up and zip it out.